Hey, welcome to Wolf's Watch. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for the questions you submitted as part of the cybersecurity series. Today, we are talking to a leading authority on cybersecurity, Scott Schneider. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Jeff.
I'm really looking forward to this. Now, as you're watching this, let me give you a little bit of background on Scott and why I am excited about talking with him. As Scott likes to say, former FBI Director Robert Mueller once stated that there are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. That's a chilling thought for a Thursday. Scott Schneider is a professional speaker, author, and cybersecurity evangelist, the creator of the brand Tech Advise. And Tech Advise has the goal of raising awareness about the importance of cybersecurity for anyone who uses technology. That's anyone that uses technology, whether it's entrepreneurs and small businesses up to boards of directors of major corporations, which he has worked with. Scott has gained more than 35 years of experience as an executive information technology, cybersecurity, and privacy expert. And despite this, he can still somehow speak plain language English when talking about to non-technical audiences about highly technical issues, which is hugely important. He breaks down the technobabble and easily understood and actionable topics, and to help individuals and companies recognize the risks of the connected world, which are way, way broader than you may realize, and what they can do to protect themselves and their businesses and your business. So you can protect yourself and your business from the bad guys, of which there's an increasing number, apparently. Which is one of the things I'd like to start with, guys. It just seems with all the reports that we've been getting, like the July 6th, was reported on July 6th in major headlines. You got a headline here from Reuters that I'm going to share in just a second. But with mass attacks like we had over the 4th of July holiday, is this something that's really getting worse the way it looks and feels, or is it just being focused on and reported more?
That's a great question, Jeff. So the answer to that is all of the above. Definitely, according to Gartner and all of the cybersecurity publications and studies that have been done, the number of incidents of cyber attacks are increasing, and that's just something that will continue. And then on the other hand, you're hearing about it more. It used to be that was if you got breached. I'm a former CISO. If you got breached,
could you just real quick? What's a CISO?
That's a great. The minute I said that, so a chief information security officer. My job was basically information security for a bank.
Oh wow!
But basically, the number or you just don't want to tell everybody your dirty laundry. So. Sure. You kind of keep it to yourself, and there's other factors too. You may have, if you have some sort of data security incident, you may have a confidentiality issue going on where you don't want to spread that too far, especially in data breaches where people's private information is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems especially with financial interest, health information, things like that, it could create an undue panic where we hear something but don't really understand the implication of it, or can't give, it's like, okay, that happened, but it's not really a big risk. Go on with your day. Or it's like, oh, geez, this is something to really focus on.
Absolutely. It's, again, as probably with most answers today, there's a spectrum of things. There are people that are going, their attitude is that it's just something that's going to happen. And there's people that are very concerned about it. In California, Virginia, and a couple other states, I think Colorado is right on the verge of passing a privacy act. Basically, the states are taking people's privacy into their hands. And in California, there are substantial penalties for companies that meet certain criteria that have leaks with people's personally identifiable information.
And that seems to create more of a headache for businesses potentially than actually solving the problem.
It can, yeah, it really can. It's there's more regulations. There's more. I would say probably less cooperation, more focus on it, and really, excuse me, those are the things that you can be drawn off to. Compliance is not security, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so,
no, that's a brilliant point.
Yeah,
compliance a lot of times we're not security.
Yeah, in security, we're drawn down the path of working on compliance related issues rather than focusing on the security. There's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only so much money in a budget. So If compliance takes over too much, then security can suffer.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Before I have a follow-up question on that, before we take that step, I'd like to come back to the July 4th holiday weekend, Independence Day holiday weekend
Mhm.
cyber attack. I'm going to share a headline from Reuters. It's like up to 1,500 businesses affected because a core service was attacked. And this really left me as like going, man, this is something that really affects any business. Here's an example of it. It affects small businesses where, I'd kind of thought, well, yeah, for a midsize or big business, somebody that creates a big target, they've really got to worry about it, but maybe not so much the rest of us. Is that really true, or who's truly at risk here?
Yeah, so that's another great question, Jeff. Actually, everybody is at risk, from individual users and consumers at home to small to medium-sized businesses to larger businesses. And it used to be that the focus of the bad guys was kind of on the bigger businesses because they were the big fish. According to the 2021 Verizon data breach incident report, which was just published a month or so ago, basically small to medium-sized businesses are equally as vulnerable to a cyber attack as large businesses. And then on the flip side of that, they're probably less prepared because the large businesses have the budgets and the tools and the people to protect their systems. The smaller businesses, a lot of times, don't have those type of investments or those type of resources. So they're actually more vulnerable to what's going on. And then I guess a follow-up to that is cybercrime is a business. It's a great business model. There are companies you can hire. There's things like ransomware as a service. If you go out in the dark web and look for that, there are little homemade kits that are made for you.
Whoa, wait a minute. You can actually go out on the web and hire ransomware attackers.
Absolutely. Yep. It's
Oh
everything is a service, including ransomware and cybercrime as a service. So
I apologize for interrupting, but that's just like, hang on a second. Oh, geez.
It's a very good business model, to go out, and that's we read with Colonial and JBS, they were multi-million-dollar ransoms in those. That's one way. Someone told me in consulting a long time ago, there's two different business models. The first is, you can have a lamb dinner once, or you can have a wool sweater every year. So, and neither one is right or wrong. And the bad guys have definitely realized that with some of the smaller companies, this is what a lot of companies don't realize with ransomware attacks, is just because you got hit once doesn't mean you're not going to get hit again and again and again, or even that what you're paying for, the keys, the encryption keys to the ransomware, are going to be effective in decrypting your files.
Yeah. That's a scary thought. An easy mark remains an easy mark until proven otherwise.
That's correct. And then going back to an earlier question that you had, are we hearing about it more? This was another one of those factors why a lot of companies didn't advertise that they had some sort of security incident, because you don't want to, the bad guys hear that too. And they're like, well, if it was this type of incident, then that's sort of related to some other vulnerability that perhaps I could exploit and use.
So are the bad guys getting so good at this that they just kind of line up and go, look, once this exploit works, we know it sets up this one and this one afterwards?
Absolutely. Yeah. There these just like we're talking about COVID variants right now. And this is one of the problems, kind of going off on a tangent here with antivirus, is the way that signature-based antivirus, which is how a lot of antivirus works, is something is discovered, it's reported, it has to be investigated, and then the antivirus companies come out with basically signatures that recognize that and will block that attack. That takes almost a year for that to happen. And about the time that comes out, a new variant could come out because the bad guys know what's coming. So they just tweak a couple of things, and they can use the same software over and over again.
So we're truly driving our businesses forward, watching the rearview mirror.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And I want to display this real quick. This is the survey that you had mentioned earlier, and some of the data is coming from, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. Every year, Verizon. This is particular to data breaches, but there are other reports that are put out by some of the major security vendors and researchers like Gartner and Forrester that also follow these trends for exploits and the number of companies and the costs that are associated with security incidents.
Well, and some of the statistics, just at a glance for a layman, some of the statistics were truly frightening. Like the 280-day cycle on identifying and correcting and broadcasting a threat, like we were just talking about with the virus protection, that it took so long to be able to take that action. But also that most of the breaches were really driven by misuse of credentials. I think the top two categories were misuse of credentials, and I forget what the second one was, but I looked at it and going, that's still, it seems that that's stuff that can be covered with some relatively basic best practices to at least minimize the leading opportunities.
Yeah, credentials are tough because everybody uses them. So if you think about, just kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with the July 6th, Kaseya is a managed service provider. So a lot of companies, especially small to medium-sized businesses, don't have a lot of IT resources. And so for certain things like server management or certain applications, they'll farm that out to other companies that specialize in that. That's essentially what Kaseya and a lot of other companies do. And so basically you're relying on their security and their procedures. And this is actually one of the things that I would recommend every company do, and especially if you're smaller, is really get to know your technology service provider and what their capabilities are, and ask them questions. Do you have an incident response plan? If there is a breach or a security incident, what's our notification? Can we be involved in the discussions and in the forensics and things like that? What are our, with your legal counsel, what are our remedies if something happens bad to us? Certainly with Kaseya, as you pointed out, several thousand companies were affected.
And that was this headline from Reuters, the 1500. That was what was behind that.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah, that was the Kaseya attack.
There's a supermarket chain in Sweden with Kaseya that they didn't open for a few days. That's a huge business interruption. So
because the point of sale their cash register, all the point of sale equipment was locked up because
that's exactly correct. Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yeah, and that was one of those applications that was outsourced. And a key point I'd like to drive home is there's no good or bad necessarily. Even with bad guys, there's good guy or good bad guys. Recently this week, an Israeli company, the NSO Group, which works with governments, they have a spyware called Pegasus, which has been reported to have broken out into the wild and actually makes pretty much everybody's iPhone potentially subject to their spyware.
No.
Basically everything you do on your iPhone and everything, if this Pegasus spyware was somehow found its way to your iPhone, that's available for everybody. But most of the time, NSO Group is known for working with governments or companies to, so they would be a good bad guy, a good hacker. And then there's the bad guys, and that's everybody from cyber criminals to, maybe some industrious hackers working in their basements to, what we're seeing increasingly is that there's nation state hackers that are starting to flex their muscles more and more. And
I'm going to interrupt you for just a second so we can say hi to I've had our mutual friend, Joe DeShira, waiting in the background. He was saying hello and he's joining us from the East Coast. Joe, thanks for being part of the conversation. It's always good to have, to have colleagues along. This is 21st century television. It's live and interactive. So join the conversation as you're watching this. Let us know, say hello, so we can give you a shout out. And if you've got questions, if we got time, we'll get to those. So coming back to what you're saying about the nation state actors, that seems to be something that's also more frequently heard in media reports. We hear Russian hackers or hackers that are tied to the Chinese military, Chinese Communist Party have launched some of these attacks.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, this will probably be the next in my opinion, will be the next big war that we have, is a cyber war.
Wow. Okay.
Because you're seeing some of the saber rattling even this week, with President Biden, basically being a little more aggressive with Russia, and naming China in the March Microsoft Exchange hack that took place. Those are very serious allegations, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that, knowing some of our three initial agencies that we have in the United States, I'm sure they're well founded. But you have major players like Russia, China, North Korea, the Ukraine, that they recognize the value and the leverage in attacking our electronic infrastructure.
That's just, it leaves me speechless just to think about from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and think about this as you're watching this, what to do when you're facing attacks by large foreign governments, or even small foreign governments, but it's actually, has the resources of an entire country attempting to get into your systems.
Yep. All these people are there. I'm sorry, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, all of these people, they're very smart. They're very motivated. They're very dedicated. Some nation states have, including the United States, have, literally thousands of people working on this. This is their full-time job. And just going back, a decade or so ago, the U.S. Itself, was involved in this, allegedly, and the Israeli government allegedly, with the Stuxnet, which was a cyber attack against the Iranians and their centrifuges used to enrich uranium. And there's some great books out there talking about the Stuxnet attack, but that's already ancient history. And then, if you come forward a little bit, Sony Pictures was threatened allegedly by the North Korean government over a movie that they were going to release. And pretty much those of you that remember it, it was quite embarrassing and quite costly for Sony to address that cyber attack of their email and other servers.
So it seems that this is happening more often, but it's also becoming radically more profitable to do it, which would just create a negative cycle for us in terms of it makes it, just a huge incentive to continue these types of hacks and to find other exploits to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's big business, and there's different business models, as we discussed earlier, with you hired out as cyber crime as a service, or ransomware as a service. There are exploit kits you buy and do it yourself. There are governments that are looking for access to hard currency, or for other types of ransom, or other types of potentially political leverage. So I think we'll continue to see this, and it's a continuing cat and mouse game, and it will be. It always has been, and it will continue to be a cat and mouse game between security providers and the bad guys, whoever they are, to protect, and then on the other side of it, to try to penetrate systems.
And to be involved in that cat and mouse game for as long as you have, that must take a phenomenal amount of energy just to stay on top of the day-to-day threats, the evolving threats, let alone being able to deploy ways of preventing it, and helping people like you've been doing with Tech Advise.
Absolutely. If you're an adrenaline junkie, get into cybersecurity. Or kind of, I have a saying. I said, it's being in cybersecurity is like 365 days of Christmas. Every morning you wake up and there's new surprises under the tree. So
yes.
That's definitely the way it is. Even for me, I still I have about a dozen different threat feeds that I monitor every day, just to see what's going on in the world. And you and I talked last week, and we were talking about 2 or 3 different things, and then this week there's 2 or 3 more, and that's going to be a continuing trend.
But you don't really come across as an adrenaline junkie. I mean, are we going to see YouTube videos of you doing stunt piloting planes or base jumping off of buildings?
Probably not that. I do, and there's actually a security story to this. I do scuba dive, and I have since I was 16 years old.
Nice.
And really enjoy it a lot. One of the things that our instructor told us back when I was 16, I always remembered is, the question always comes up, what about sharks? And it's
Yeah.
it's a good question. And the instructor was fairly nonchalant about it. He said, sharks aren't out looking for a 6-foot dude in a black suit blowing bubbles. And there's a lot to be said for that. We're not their normal prey item. On the same token, they do represent a threat. They're out there. And I had occasion 4 years ago to go great white cage diving in Mexico. And
you intentionally got into the water where you knew there were great white sharks.
I did, in a cage. So
that's definitely some adrenaline junkie activity.
But believe me, my family gave me grief for even that, for even getting in a cage. But the thing that struck me most about it, and it relates to cybersecurity, is, I'd been diving all over the world. The water looked the same. It was as blue as any other place. Some of the bottom features looked the same. The shoreline looked the same. There are a few seals out there. But there was nothing there that would have caused me to be concerned about where I was diving. If our boat just pulled up and we put our tanks on and jumped in and decided to go for a dive, nothing would have given me any pause at all. Until you're in the cage and you see these huge 20-foot gray shapes coming up out of the
20 feet,
20 feet long, like the size of a sprinter van.
Whoa!
Huge animals. And it just occurred to me that, there's nothing in my experience that would have given me any pause, and yet this danger exists. And I think that translates to the cybersecurity world for a lot of business owners, that you guys are swimming with the sharks. We're all swimming with the sharks. And it's not just that they're out there and they're not looking for a 6-foot guy in a black suit blowing bubbles. They are looking for us. We are their prey items. And that's probably the first thing that I would ask any executive to recognize, and any business owner to recognize, is you are a target. There's no such thing as too small or flying under the radar in today's world, because the technologies that are used, the bots that go out online and look for your computers, they don't know what your business is. They don't know what your computer does. They're looking for vulnerabilities. And so they don't really care if you're big or small, or if you're have $1 million or $10,000. They're basically looking for vulnerabilities and a way to get in.
They're searching for open windows, and when they find one, they're going to go inside and see what they can get.
That's exactly right. So it's Shark Week out there every week.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. It's Shark Week every week. Oh my gosh. How did you get started in this field with IT, with cybersecurity?
Oh boy. So I started out with the honorable intention of being a doctor, specifically a thoracic surgeon, and got into college and basically, ran out of money and had to do something. I taught myself how to program in college or in high school rather. And then in college, went and got a job at a company here in Orange County in the mailroom, and kind of talked my way up into IT. And then from IT, got into other areas such as compliance, and then eventually information security.
Okay.
It used to be a lot easier back in the day. The computers that I looked at and I first started working on, it was a box in a room with locking doors and hardwired network cables to dumb terminals. So they were definitely a lot safer in those days, because at least you could keep your arms around things. By the same token, the technology that we have today, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now without great technology, with the internet and the video streaming and all the other things that we have. So, but with great gifts comes great responsibility.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's just the complexity of it is mind-boggling. You know, when I ask about, the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making, you see, especially small business, mid-sized businesses. Before going there, though, just wanted to follow on the complexity of it in the leaks that creates. You think, just on this broadcast, as you're watching this, think about it. You're watching on a computer connected to probably a router or local internet connection that's going over the internet, or maybe your Wi-Fi. Maybe you're having a cup of coffee, at your favorite establishment while watching this. And Scott, while we're talking, get a camera, a microphone, all this gear hooked up, and running that through a router. It just seems that creates so many potential windows that it's almost impossible to stay on top of where we're leaking, where we're creating leaks, where we're leaving a window open.
Yeah, it's really a full-time job, and full-time job plus, and it's something that a lot of executives, especially at smaller companies, but even boards of directors, don't take that for granted. Just as you said, if you want to think about technology, we talk about it in terms of stacks, but it's a lot like a cake. So a cake has various layers. You might have a chocolate layer and a spice layer and a marble layer and things like that. They all have different characteristics and do different things or taste a little different. That's how technology is. The layers are, instead of marble and spice and chocolate, they're called things like operating system and network and application. And there is a technology stack that all of these things are in there. So if you think about just even what we're doing today, we have a network component. We have an application that we're using here with StreamYard. We have operating systems, either Windows or Mac OS or perhaps even Linux. So it's very much like that cake. And any part of that cake can go wrong at any time. And it doesn't say static. Cake goes bad, and it's the same in technology. So the one thing that I would ask everybody to think about is you have to update everything. Everybody assumes, and Windows does a great job. Apple does a great job with Mac OS about updating their operating system and some of their applications like Microsoft Office. So you don't even have to think about it. But there are things that you mentioned, Jeff. How about your Wi-Fi router? When was the last time there's special software in it called firmware? Your camera, which is huge, baby monitors and webcams, a lot of times are used for compromise because the original software is on them. And I don't know about you, but I don't want someone turning my web phone camera or any of my in-house cameras on, taking a look at me walking around the house, or listening to what I have to thought. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm watching the time because I'd asked for a half hour and we're just a little bit past that. Can you stay for a little bit longer to talk more about that stack and some of the mistakes?
I love this stuff, Jeff.
Appreciate that.
It'd be my pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
So as you're watching this, we usually go about 30 minutes, as you're likely familiar with Wolf's Watch. But this is such great information. We're going to go for another 15, 20 minutes so that we can talk some more about that layering of the cake and some of the key mistakes, what can be done to counter that. So thanks for giving us some extra time, Scott.
Sure, my pleasure. I would say, for companies, kind of the top probably 3 or 4 things. There's, as entrepreneurs and small business people, and even in large business, the last thing anybody needs is one more thing to do. Yeah. But this is so important, and it is really something that people think about as long as things are going well. And Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face. And that definitely happens. So the first thing I would say is make sure you have a plan. No matter what size your business is, if your technology is compromised, who are you going to call? Who's going to help you? Do you need an attorney, for instance? Do you maintain some of your customers' personal information? Do you even know the resources? When you're in the middle of you turn on your computer and everything, the ransomware sign comes up and says you're locked, that's not the time to go looking for help. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be formal. It could be one page, but it's like, gosh, here's who I'm going to call. And then part of that, for those of you that have technology service providers, so we talked about Kaseya earlier as a managed service provider,
right?
Know them and know what their capabilities are. Another saying that I've always had is believing that security is your technology provider's problem is like believing that the Titanic is the White Star Line's problem while you're standing on the deck in waist-deep water. So you are committed when you're using other people's technology, and so understand, do they have a plan, and how do you fit into their plan? We kind of talked about that earlier.
Yes.
So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is update everything, like we said before as well, is just your firmware needs to be updated. Your cameras need to be updated. Your router needs to be updated. Your basic technology, like your hardware at home, your laptops and your desktops and things like that. Probably about 5 years is getting pretty old for some of those things. So, consider having a replacement plan for some of those, some of your home technology, and some of your smaller technology. And that goes for larger companies as well with servers. One of the challenges we had in my last position was that we were a bank. We were used to having everybody inside the fence. And when COVID came along, we had to push everybody outside. So
I was about to ask about that with such a sudden, especially because it was so sudden.
It was
remote work.
Yeah, it was huge, and there's huge security implications, but there's also operational implications. The VPN servers, or virtual private network servers, that were being used for people to talk to the bank from home. They were designed to handle 20 executives. They were not designed to handle 300 people dialing in at the same time every day for 8 to 9 hours a day. So
I hadn't even thought about that. The service providers being able to scale to that.
Exactly. Yep. And then you have other risks, supply chain risks. In the middle of COVID, it was hard to get laptops. It was hard to get servers. So these are things that, again, as you're updating everything, think about a technology replacement plan so that you're not completely exposed.
Yes, it just seems that creates a massive policy and procedure problem. What's everybody doing?
Exactly.
In addition to the equipment problem of what the heck is everybody using at home?
Exactly. Well, the Center for Internet Security has what they call the top 20. They've actually just come out with version 8, which has a couple less, but they've kind of consolidated some things. But I would encourage everybody to just Google CIS top 20 security controls and go over to images, and you'll see a infographic that they have of some of these things. But
so that's CIS top 20.
The CIS top 20, or Center for Internet Security top 20, But it will show that the first two controls is know your assets, know your software, and know your hardware, know where it's at and what version it's at, and all the rest of that. So that's really important.
Yes, the phones, every piece of technology. Because
and
what about Internet of Things? Because more and more people are installing Ring cameras on their doors.
Absolutely.
They're connecting some of their appliances, especially heating controls, heating and air conditioning controls in homes. Does that become part of that broader, now there's another window open?
Absolutely.
Problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's your home network that you have. A lot of people just use one network, and you're using it for work. The kids are on it. Your Internet of Things, your Nest is on it. Your Ring doorbell is on it. Your smart TVs are on it. And some of those devices, such as, there's well-known exploits with baby monitors and other types of things. You can go out and Google, default passwords for some of these for baby monitors. And, a lot of people don't change these things. They don't change their router passwords.
Yeah. So the most basic, the password itself continues to be one of the biggest problems.
It really is. Yeah. Password. I would say the two
Wow.
things, passwords and patching, making sure that you
Okay.
have the latest software updates. That's
Hmm.
what we refer to as patching. Those are the two biggest things that could really bring the curve down in terms of the risk
Wow.
that people are exposed to.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because I think about it, it just astounds me because that was things, I started my career in aerospace. So we got training on those types of security 101 issues, in the 1980s. And yet here it is 40 years later. That
Absolutely.
hurts to say that out loud, but it's 30, 40 years later, and we're still struggling with the same issue of just going, change your password from password or 1234, is the first step in securing your systems.
Yeah, it's amazing, Jeff. The every year the worst passwords. It's another thing you can Google. The worst passwords used are updated every year, and password and 12345 and QWERTY and all those things continue. And this is 10, 15 years, I think. They continue to be in the top 10.
Hmm.
And then the bad part is people use these passwords not only for their personal accounts, but all of their personal accounts. So not only do I use
Wow.
it for my utilities, but also my banking and maybe even my frequent flyer miles. But then a lot of people, especially working from home, will use the same passwords at their business. And a good policy for businesses to have is that your passwords have to be non-personal. You cannot use a personal password in business, and it should be the other way around too, vice versa.
Yes. Um, Still watching the time. We want to make sure we can cover a few more things. What other top tips would you have
Boy, I would say,
in
especially
response to the common mistakes that you're seeing that really could be prevented?
yeah, I would say backups. Make sure that you have very, very robust backups.
You
And
mean I
these are
need to
both
back up my hard drive?
online and offline. Yeah, exactly. So make sure you have cloud backup services that are available. And again, this for people that work at home. For myself, I use a backup service, but I also have I went to Costco and I have an offline backup that I do once a week, and it stays there just in case the offline service goes. But making sure that they're robust. For those of you that are managing an IT department, maybe at a smaller company, make sure those backups are tested. We had when I worked at
Yeah.
one of my former employers, we were performing an audit of our backups, and we had daily, weekly, monthly backups. But we actually did an audit of when they were actually being performed and whether the media was good. And we actually had some huge holes in our backups. And so we had to go back and think about it. It's another thing that even in professional shops, this was a Fortune 100 company, and we had major holes in our backups. So that's something I would pay attention to, especially in the age of ransomware and other malware.
Yeah. Backups don't help if they don't work.
That's exactly right. Yep. Or if they're not taken, if they're not ever taken,
Or if they're not taken. Yes. It helps even less if you never even back them up.
That's right. Yeah.
But
And I would
now
say,
that's, now
oh,
that
go
you
ahead.
mentioned that, it's something that I've over the years that I've heard again and again. Something happened, even not an attack, computer goes down. Early days I had, a number of years ago, I had that happen with one of my personal laptops. Had a backup, the system failed. It was an older system, so it wasn't too surprising. It was like, no problem, pull out the backup. Guess what? The file's corrupted, doesn't work right. And so I don't have the backup that I thought I did, which then created a problem.
Exactly. This is why you want to test them. Or I know, again, probably at the same company, we had these things that came out called zip drives, right? Way
Yeah,
back in the
right,
day before
right.
USB. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's on, as we were going from zip drives to USB, we needed some files from the zip drive days. And, we started looking around the computers and it's like, does anybody have a zip drive anymore? So even though we had backups, the technology had moved on. And it was quite a bit of work to figure out how to get the backups off those old zip drives. So pay attention.
Or a 3.5-inch floppy.
or 3.5-inch floppy. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
something I ran into recently. I've got in a painfully dating myself again, but there's a report that I had done years and years ago that I was looking for to get a citation for some research out of it. And I realized it's most likely on, I've still got a set of 3.5-inch drives that I had not copied over yet. And it's probably on that. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that, because I haven't had a computer with a 3.5-inch drive on it for 10 years.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you would probably, you can still buy some external drives, but this goes back to update what we talked about, point number 2, update everything. Yep. And, these are the things you have to think about, or the technology gets old, it gets stale. Someone once said technology is like fish, it starts to smell when it's on the shelf too long,
Yes. And much faster than you would imagine.
Exactly. So again, there's a lot of things we need to do, but just the awareness of knowing that, knowing that you can't ignore this. You can't afford, in a technology age and a knowledge-based economy age, to ignore this stuff. Between the risks of cybersecurity, the risks of, we actually call the old technology, there's a name for it, called technical debt. And you can go with a little bit of technical debt, but if you start getting too far, you're going to run into some problems. And I think that probably the fourth thing, real quick, Jeff, is just realizing that we all have more than one computer. And I realize some of your audience might be sitting there going, no, I have one computer. It's my laptop or my desktop. I'm looking at it. But we all have one of these things. And they are computers, and they need the exact same protections that are often overlooked. So you need antivirus on your computer. You need a VPN, on your smartphone. You need to make sure that your updates are occurring, and that your app, they have something that's a little bit scary called applications, and be very, very careful with the phone apps that you download, and what permissions, where you get them, what permissions they have, and that they're updated regularly. So even though I'm in technology, my friends make fun of me because I'm probably one of the most Stone Age technology guys there is. Just because I basically go with the absolute minimum necessary to get things done. And I do not want to be bleeding edge, because going back to the shark thing, I don't want to be bleeding in the water with sharks out there.
Yeah, unless that's your business model, there's really no reason.
Exactly.
And that also reminds me of something that I was taught in my first job out of college. At Hughes Aircraft, they had a mantra that said, look, if technology is not the problem, technology is not the solution.
That's right. It's a tool. Technology is a tool. And, it's, and one thing too, you can't, to let everybody know, you can't be 100% secure. There are companies that have spent nothing on security, or very minimal budget devoted to security, that have been hacked. And then there's people that are companies that have spent millions of dollars on security and have thousands of employees devoted to it in some of the data breaches, and they've been hacked as well. And so it's just realizing that it's a risk like any other risk. Your factory could burn down. You could get in an auto accident. You manage these risks. And I guess my message to folks would be, recognize that it is a risk that needs to be managed. So first of all, recognize it, don't ignore it. But then on the other half of it, don't go overboard, because you could go broke doing that and still end up with a hack. So it's finding that middle ground somewhere that works with your particular business model.
And being able to master the technology that you've got.
Exactly. Or
I've run into that where I'll upgrade something and go, you know what, that was a big mistake, because the complexity of being able to master it in the time that it took outweighed the benefit that I thought I was going to get. It would have been better to stick with what I had for the time being, because we didn't really need those cool bells and whistles that were coming with the next step towards the bleeding edge.
Exactly. And in cybersecurity, with the bleeding edge, stuff that's new is buggy. So no matter how, and the companies are, people go, oh, they should be more careful and all the rest of that. No company wants a data breach. No company wants a product that allows some sort of security incident to come out. But
Hmm.
going back to what we were talking before, things are so complex and they're constantly changing, and they have to play well with each other. And they all interrelate. So, if people are making their best commercial efforts to stay up to things like that, recognize that this is our community. As technology users, we all have a piece in ensuring that things are working well. And people that do have hacks, I had a board member ask me once a couple of years ago when another large company was hacked, asked me, don't you feel good? And I said, I never feel good. It's, I thank God that it wasn't us that fell victim to that we know about. And I would never wave the red flag in front of the bull or knock people down unless they were, just basically being irresponsible. That's the whole thing. There's a thing that people that don't spend any time on cybersecurity not only will be hacked but deserve to be hacked. And I think it was Richard Clark, who was in the defense, one of the defense agencies, that made that statement. But the trouble is out there, and just as we take care of our taxes and our accounting and our marketing and all those other things, we need to make sure that we give a couple of cycles here and there to our technology and our cybersecurity.
Yes. I'm watching the time. I know we've got a hard stop at the top of the hour. As you're watching this, we're almost there. We just want to make sure I wanted to ask you about Tech Advise and how that came about when you founded Tech Advise is a company to really help with the small, mid-size, well, even with the board members of big companies, to get the message out in a way that we can, as lay people, that we can understand, the non-experts. Because cutting through the technobabble, I started my career working in like I mentioned, in aerospace companies like Hughes, and we loved our TLAs, our three-letter acronyms, right?
Yep.
So there's a language that goes with it, and understanding the language, or being able to have someone like yourself that's really good at translating that into more common American English, I guess would be a way to put it. How did Tech Advise come about?
So basically, just kind of what you alluded to there, Jeff, is as I realized. So first of all, you have to realize, as a technologist, the way that we validate ourselves to each other in the technology world is as a bunch of nerds and geeks. So we use all those three-letter acronyms you were talking about, and you've got the this and the that and the MAC address and the EIEIO and all the other things. And when you walk into a board meeting or you're talking to a business owner and stuff like that, you can physically see the eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
As people go, I have no clue what this guy is talking about, but even more important, I don't know why it's important. And so as technologists, what I realized is we have to learn how to speak the language of business and make all of this technology stuff a little less intimidating, and have business owners understand business risk and the so what's. I used to tell my team, they'd tell me, some exploit and this and that with the 13th bit of the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so what? I've got to go to the board of directors and tell them what this means to our business and what we're going to do about it and how much it's.
Yeah, is this something we got to watch, or is this DEFCON 1? Do we need to launch the bombers, or what's going on here?
Exactly. So there was that, and then just in board meetings, you'd see the board members check out and senior managers check out. So I came to realize the first part of it is that you need somebody who can explain in plain English how all this stuff works. So using I had to explain one time to a CEO of a company about network throughput using an example of a water pump network. And, he says, the problem could be we need bigger pumps. The problem could be we need bigger pipes. The problem could be something shut off somewhere. It's not just, it's not any one thing. And to do that in a non-condescending manner. And I think, they really appreciate it. The second half that I noticed is there's just a lot of smaller, entrepreneurs. My neighbor has a soils engineering business. And I was talking to him one night, this is a dozen years ago. And I said, you work from home, you have a home-based business. What happens if your computer goes down? Do you have it backed up and all that? And he goes, I'd be out of business. I don't even know what a backup is. I didn't know I needed to do that. I would be out of business because I would lose all my engineering drawings and my reports. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are like that,
Sure.
their world is on their laptop. And so they don't know it because they haven't been exposed to it. So part of Tech Advise is raising that awareness to small companies and small to medium-sized businesses that can't afford a chief information security officer or can't afford, 3 or 4 or 6 information security professionals or the tools, the multi-$1,000 tools that are available. So that was another thing with Tech Advise. My heart was really into the bad guys are out there. Like I say, they're looking for you. And so the purpose behind Tech Advise is to raise that awareness, not to scare people, but to let them know that you are swimming with the sharks. There are things that you do need to do to pay attention, and there are resources available. And that's really the reason. And then on the high end, it's talking to the boards of directors. It's making sure that the people that are responsible for the governance over some of these public companies, or even private companies, private boards of directors, that they know the so whats. They know what they should be watching.
Yeah. Well, and to understand how to properly present that to the board of directors or to C-suite. I recently talked to someone. It wasn't in technology, but they had to do a briefing to C-suite at their company. And I looked at their presentation and I was like, oh my gosh, how could this person be so far along in their career and nobody had ever coached them on how to present their case, how to do a presentation to C-suite that's going to respect everybody's time and effectively carry their message.
Exactly. Yeah, that goes back to the first big sin of technology is, as technologists, we validate ourselves to each other by showing how much we know, and that falls flat in business. Business people, they don't want to hear about it because they don't understand it, and they shouldn't have to understand it at that level. They should understand what it means to their business, and how to manage those risks.
Well, and the reality for business owners, for executives, is they've got 10 or 20 emergencies, crises, fires that they're working on and trying to get handled or make sure that their team is handling at any given moment. And to bring something new, it's got to cut through that clutter, and it's got to be put in its proper, clearly put in its proper priority relative to those other 20 things.
Absolutely.
That are on the table. And there's not a lot of time to do that. It's a short window of time to be able to effectively get that message across.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a key point that I wish, and I guess the other side of Tech Advise is to be an evangelist back to my peers in the technology world to keep spreading that message. The guys, we're new. People understand what the CFO was talking about. They understand bottom line. Double entry accounting has been around for 400 years, or probably close to 500 years now. Information security has been around maybe 30. So we're the new kids on the block. We have to figure out a way to get the attention and how to deliver a message that will allow management to make the correct decisions, as they would with a financial decision.
Yes, and as you're watching this, Scott and I had talked for hours on multiple occasions before this conversation. There's just so much more that we could cover. Scott, we might have to talk about doing a multi-part series, because we didn't touch the tip of the iceberg. I think we just sighted the tip of the iceberg at a distance with this conversation. I
think so. Yeah, that's the thing that I'm so excited about is there is so much more, and the trick again is not to be overwhelmed by it, but to be aware of it, and then to prioritize, just like you do with any other business decision and things like that. So, but ignoring it is not going to serve anybody well.
I mean, can't do the thing of, if I cover my eyes, you can't see me, kind of a response to the.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I just wish it would be that simple, huh?
Yeah, the wolves are definitely out in the forest. So
hey, easy with the wolves. Easy with the wolves thing.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Jeff. You go back to the sharks.
You know what it means? Just as an aside, you know what it means when someone gets thrown to the wolves?
No.
They're at the party at our house.
Oh, okay. Okay. Perfect. Well, hopefully
So it
someday
sounds like a bad thing, but those that are going, hey, you're getting thrown to the wolves, are like, yes.
I was going to say,
I wonder what they're serving up today.
I'll look forward to being thrown to the wolves someday.
Hey, I appreciate you taking so much time to talk with me today, to talk with our audience. And as you're watching this, Scott gets invited to speak on industry panels. He's a highly sought after speaker. He constantly works with boards of directors. As he mentioned, he recently was brought in directly at a bank at the C level to be the chief information security officer, to help them with their, making sure that they had all the windows and doors closed, if you will. So Scott, that to have someone that's just so deeply embedded in the industry, and not really a name that you would know, because in the security world, that's, not something you really want to be out waving and going, hi, here we are, we're the experts at this, until it's necessary, like it is in today's environment. So I appreciate that. Before we wrap up, I want to ask, what, with all of that that's going on, with the invitations to speak, you're a highly sought after advisor. What are you working on now? What's coming up next?
Wow. So I'm speaking with a couple companies that basically one of them does cybersecurity as a service. So I mentioned, being able to have essentially resources for companies, and be able to deliver, confidently deliver these resources to companies and things like that. So I'm actually on a technology advisory panel for a new cybersecurity as a service company called Cyvatar. This is not an advertisement for them, but that's one of the things that I'm working on. And then I have recently retired from the bank, and am moving into basically the speaking on a full-time basis and doing things like this. So it's getting all the infrastructure set up for that. I've spent a good part of my career trying to stay under the radar. If you Google my
Sure.
name, not much comes up, and that's by design. So I'm starting to come out a little bit into the open a little bit with what I'm trying to do with cybersecurity, now that I don't have day-to-day responsibility for keeping a company safe.
You're like one of the quote unquote Navy SEALs of the cybersecurity world, because we see books and whatnot from Navy SEALs after they've retired, because you don't want the visibility while you're doing what you were doing.
That's a great analogy. That's exactly what it is. And it's, and then a lot of things, you and I have a business coach, a business
Yes.
marketing coach, that talks about Facebook. And I remember the first time, he mentioned it. He's like, you got to get on Facebook. You got to get on Instagram. You need a social media presence. And all of that goes so against what my practices have been up until now, and we'll see where the middle ground is. I'm still a little leery of again, It goes back to that shark diving thing. I don't know that I want to swim without the cage that much.
Yes, joy, absolutely. Swimming with the sharks without the cage, not likely to be a good day.
Yeah.
Especially if you nicked yourself shaving, or you never know. That's those without having the cage, swim with the great whites. You don't know what's that rare 1 in a million thing that happened that creates a vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah. And just
Scott,
recognizing
what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? I'm sorry, we're running over time, and
sure.
I know
Yeah.
that you've got other stuff coming up. What's
the
best way
is S Schneider at techadvise.com. And there it is down there on the screen. So that's the best way. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to have a session like this, or something's coming up, or you think you might have an audience that could benefit from a deeper dive into cybersecurity, I would be more than happy to talk with you. This is really, it's where my heart is. It's a real danger. I can't imagine, as I'm doing it right now, building up my own business, I can't imagine building a business and having it all taken away from me, literally overnight.
Walk in the morning, you have a retail brick and mortar business, and you walk in the morning, you can't open your cash registers.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, something we didn't touch on, you go out to get in your car and the ignition won't start. You know, if you've got a car, this is something that perhaps cues up a future conversation. It's like, if you have a car that's less than 10 years old, it likely has 20 or more computers embedded in its systems because of all the brake monitoring, the GPS, the new radio, those nice LCD screens everybody's gotten used to with the touch response and whatnot. It's throughout, and that creates a whole other level of challenges. And if you have some kind of connection to a service that, oh shoot, what is it called?
OnStar.
Yes, like OnStar. Thank you. You know, I can't imagine what kind of a exploit risk that creates. So, especially if it's a company vehicle, that ties back into the business.
Yeah, the biggest thing to remember is if you're connected, you're vulnerable.
Yep. If you're Bluetooth to something, whether it's your car's information system or to another device, like this earpiece that I use for interviews, you know, that opens up another conversation for what kind of security risks are we not paying attention to.
Exactly.
Wow, so much stuff. And again, thank you to our mutual colleague, Joe DeShira from the East Coast, founder of Bedrock Business Builders. We appreciate you being with us, Joe. And as you're watching this, if you submitted a question that we didn't explicitly cover in today's conversation, you will get an answer. We had quite a bit that we covered, but there's so much more. We'll follow through I'll follow through on a guarantee to make sure they got answered for you, and we'll send that out to you. Scott, thanks for staying so much longer than I had asked you to, and I really appreciate the information. As you're watching this, thanks for being here today. You know, if you like this kind of conversation, hit the like button, feed the algorithm so you can get updates and help us get the word out. And this is interactive, so send your comments. Your comments are read. It helps shape future episodes, but it also gets back to professionals like Scott. You know, if you've got a question and you're watching this on a replay, post your question in the comments because it will get forwarded to Scott to get answered. So, Scott, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
Yep, my pleasure. Yeah.
All right, thanks for watching Wolf's Watch. Without you and guests like Scott, this would not be much of a much of a watch. So on Wolf's Watch, we're constantly scouring the countryside to find resources and tips, best practices that help you move your business forward as a business owner. So I'm Wolf. Thanks for being with us today. And reach out to Scott at Schneider@techadvise.com. That's Schneider@techadvise.com. He's a great speaker. He's fun to talk to. He's got some great high adrenaline stories. Believe it or not, we talked a little bit about the scuba diving. So again, thanks, Scott, and we will see you on the road.